The first time I shook his hand, I felt it. The smile that didn't reach his eyes, the grip that tried too hard, the word old school sliding out of his mouth like an insult dressed up as a compliment. That was my introduction to Daniel Mercer, the company's new vice president. He had a slick navy suit, cufflinks that gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and the kind of confidence that came from PowerPoint slides and business school debates, not from years in the trenches. He looked at me like I was a relic, some artifact he'd be forced to study before tossing into storage. My name is Marcus Hale. I'm 45 years old, Senior Director of Operations at Ashford Dynamics. I've been with the company for 14 years, long enough to watch it crawl out of a brutal recession, weather hostile acquisitions, and build a reputation for precision execution. Long enough to recruit, train, and shape a team that turned into one of the most reliable units in the entire firm. We weren't just a department. We were the backbone behind Ashford's biggest wins: government contracts, international clients, rollouts that other firms said were impossible until we delivered. We had awards lining the wall of our floor. People outside the company knew our name. Inside, people respected us because we produced, quarter after quarter, year after year. When Mercer arrived, I was told I'd be his mentor. "You've got the experience," the CEO said. "Show him how things really work." I took that responsibility seriously. Leaders pass down knowledge, and I've always believed in leaving something better than I found it. So I opened the door to my world. I invited him into meetings, explained the hidden gears of Ashford Dynamics, the things you don't find in an orientation binder. I thought he'd listen. I thought he'd learn. Instead, he started talking over me in front of my own staff, correcting me on things he barely understood, dropping terms like synergy optimization and strategic pivoting, while I was breaking down how to salvage a contract when a supplier fails. He took credit for a phrase I used during a strategy session, repeating it almost word for word in front of the executive board. They nodded, impressed, while I sat there, jaw tight, wondering if anyone had noticed. At first, I brushed it off. New blood always comes in eager, trying to prove themselves. I told myself he just needed time to find his footing. But then he started calling my staff into one-on-one meetings without me. People who'd been with me for years, who trusted me, suddenly started dropping lines like, "Well, Mercer says we should." It didn't sound malicious, not at first, just different. But I felt it, the ground shifting beneath me. I'd be in a conference room, explaining a rollout plan, and I'd catch Mercer's smirk across the table, like he was humoring me. I'd share data points, and he'd jump in with a better framing that sounded fresh but ignored the realities of execution. He liked theory. I lived in reality. But the more he spoke, the more people started listening to him. Not because he was right, but because he sounded new, flashy, modern. I told myself it didn't matter, that results always win in the end. And for a while they did. My team continued to deliver, meeting deadlines that looked impossible, keeping clients loyal, proving time and again that discipline beats jargon. But every night, when I sat at my desk alone, I felt the unease growing, the kind you can't shake with logic, the kind that keeps you awake even when the numbers are on your side. I'd been through corporate battles before. I'd seen rival directors play politics, maneuvering for budget and recognition. But this was different. Mercer wasn't trying to compete. He was trying to replace. He didn't want to learn how we worked. He wanted to dismantle it and build something with his own name stamped on the blueprint. And the worst part? No one else seemed to see it. Not yet. So I kept teaching him, kept showing up, running point, guiding him through crises. Because that's what leaders do. You train the next generation, even if they don't respect the lessons. You pass down knowledge, even if you suspect it'll be misused. You carry yourself with discipline, even when the pit in your stomach tells you a storm is coming. 8 months later, he stood in front of the entire department and announced he was restructuring. My entire team, my family, was gone in less than 15 minutes. The auditorium lights were too bright that morning, buzzing faintly like they always did when the fixtures were warming up. Rows of my people filled the seats, their chatter low, nervous. They didn't know what was coming. I did. Not the details, not the full scope. But I had felt the tension building for weeks, the way Daniel Mercer had been moving pieces behind the scenes. He stood at the front with his polished smile, sleeves rolled up like he was ready to work, though I'd never seen him break a sweat over anything but a presentation clicker. He tapped the microphone once, and the room fell quiet. "We're restructuring for efficiency," he began, his voice smooth and rehearsed. It was the kind of sentence that sounded harmless if you didn't know the language of corporate war. But I knew. My chest tightened. The silence that followed was suffocating, punctuated only by the shifting of chairs and the faint sound of someone clearing their throat in the back row. Then, like a blade across the gut, he laid it out. Entire units dissolved, positions eliminated, staff dismissed. 15 minutes was all it took to erase years of loyalty and sweat. I didn't move, didn't speak. My training kept me still. You don't show panic in front of your people. You don't show rage in front of an enemy. Inside, though, something was tearing open, raw and jagged. I glanced at the faces around me. People I had recruited fresh out of college, people I had fought HR to retain when budget cuts threatened their jobs, people who had followed me through deadlines so brutal we slept on office couches. They were staring at Mercer like he had just flipped the ground out from under them. Then his eyes locked on mine. That smirk again, hidden beneath a mask of professionalism. "Old school methods don't fit our vision anymore," he said, and though it was directed to the whole room, every single person knew exactly who he meant. A direct hit, delivered in broad daylight. I didn't flinch, but my stomach coiled tight. My people turned toward me, their expressions twisting with confusion, pity, maybe even anger. The sound of cardboard being folded echoed across the floor. Someone was already clearing a desk. A woman I'd mentored for 6 years buried her face in her hands, muffling sobs. Another man stared blankly at the floor, his badge still hanging around his neck, like a weight he couldn't lift. It was chaos, but quiet chaos, the kind that stings worse than shouting. Watching them walk out, carrying boxes with family photos and coffee mugs, was like watching my own blood spill. Some couldn't meet my eyes. Others did, and the look said everything. "You failed us." I wanted to tell them it wasn't my choice, that I had fought, argued, pleaded behind closed doors to keep them safe. But words would have meant nothing in that moment. Their careers, their stability, their sense of belonging, it was gone. The dismantling was complete. When the room emptied, I went to my office. The awards on the wall caught the light, mocking me now. Team of the Year, Excellence in Execution, Leadership Honor. I wrapped each frame carefully, but my hands felt heavy, like I was packing relics from a past life. Every photo of my team smiling at holiday parties, every trophy engraved with our department's name, turned into evidence of something that no longer existed. Mercer appeared in the doorway as I closed my last box. "No hard feelings," he said, his hand patting my shoulder like we were old friends. The arrogance in his voice almost broke my composure, But I kept my jaw locked, my eyes cold. I carried the box to my car, the desert sun blinding, the heat pressing down. My truck's interior smelled faintly of leather and dust, grounding me in silence as I sat behind the wheel. I should have felt empty. Instead, I felt something sharper forming beneath the devastation. 3 weeks later, his first panicked text came through, and I knew the dismantling had just begun, but not of me. The first text came on a Monday afternoon, just a single line from Daniel Mercer, short and abrupt. "Call me when you can. Urgent." I stared at the screen, then locked my phone without replying. Whatever crisis he was facing wasn't my problem anymore. I had packed my office, walked out with my dignity intact, and left him standing over the ruins he created. Still, 2 days later, another message buzzed through. This one longer. "We need to talk. Situation is getting out of control." Please, I ignored that one too. By the fourth call, curiosity got the better of me. His number lit up my phone, and I let it ring twice before answering. The voice that poured through the speaker wasn't the confident, smooth tone from the town hall. It was high, tight, strained, carrying the edge of a man trying not to sound desperate, but failing miserably. "Marcus, I need your help," he said, words tumbling over each other. "The timelines are collapsing. The team can't keep up. We've already missed 2 client deliverables, and the board is breathing down my neck." I let him talk, saying nothing. It was like opening a valve on a pipe under too much pressure. He ranted about morale problems, about key staff quitting, about executives calling him at all hours demanding answers he didn't have. I pictured the people he had handpicked to replace my crew, the polished resumes, the big ideas, the shiny smiles. On paper, they looked like winners. In practice, they couldn't hold the line when the bullets started flying. Finally, he slowed down. "I was thinking maybe you could, consult. Just on the side. Help us restructure the workflows. I know we had our differences, but your methods clearly worked. We could use some of that right now." The irony almost made me laugh. The same man who stood in front of hundreds of employees and declared my approach obsolete was now begging me to resurrect it. Outdated 1 month, essential the next. I took a breath and answered with calm precision. "No, Daniel. I'm not interested." He stammered, tried to pivot, offered to pay me privately. I cut him off. "No." My tone stayed even, respectful, but final. There was silence on the other end, the kind that tells you a man is realizing the ground beneath him is crumbling. He muttered something about understanding and hung up. What I didn't tell him was that I saved every text, every voicemail. His words weren't just desperate cries for help. They were evidence, proof that he had failed where I had succeeded. I didn't know when I'd need it, but I knew enough to prepare. Experience had taught me that collapses don't happen all at once. They crack slowly, fractures spiderwebbing beneath the surface, until one day the whole structure gives way. My team had never cracked. We were built different. We operated like a squad in the field. Tight, disciplined, each member trained to cover the others. No wasted motion, no ego battles. Everyone knew their role, and everyone trusted the man or woman beside them. When a client screamed at 2 a.m, someone picked up. When a system failed, 3 people jumped in before the problem spread. That kind of cohesion doesn't show up in a resume. It's forged in fire, in long nights, in shared victories and scars. Mercer had dismantled all of that, thinking shiny new pieces could replace steel forged over years. Now he was watching his machine seize up and die. I didn't feel pity, just clarity. He had torn apart something rare, something proven, for the sake of his ego, and now he was learning the cost. By the end of that week, the board had heard whispers, and when the board starts whispering, careers start dying. The email came late at night, quiet and polite, like a whisper in a dark room. A senior board member wanted to speak with me, confidentially, about the state of operations. I read it twice before leaning back in my chair. They already knew something was wrong. They just wanted confirmation from someone who had lived it. The company's flagship department, the one I had built from the ground up, was crumbling under Daniel Mercer's leadership, and the cracks were spreading wide enough for even the highest offices to see. We met the next day in a discreet conference room, no nameplate on the door, blinds drawn tight. The board member was a man I'd respected for years, measured, intelligent, not easily swayed by flash. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Marcus, I need to understand what really happened. Why is our strongest division failing?" His tone carried more gravity than curiosity. This wasn't a fishing expedition. This was reconnaissance before a strike. I didn't attack Mercer directly. I didn't need to. Instead, I slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies of performance reports from the last 5 years, each one charting a consistent upward climb under my leadership. I included testimonials from our biggest clients, praising the efficiency and dependability of my team. I added photos of awards, internal commendations, the plaques that once lined the hall outside our offices. Hard evidence of what we had built, brick by brick, contract by contract. Then, layered on top, I placed Mercer's texts and voicemails, desperate pleas for help, confessions that his team couldn't keep up. The proof was all there, undeniable. The board member leafed through the documents slowly, pausing at the client testimonials, the charts of deadlines met, the awards. He nodded once, lips pressed into a thin line. "This will do," he said quietly. I didn't need to ask what he meant. That afternoon, the walls of Ashford Dynamics shook with closed-door meetings. I wasn't inside, but I didn't have to be. Raised voices leaked into the hallway, sharp words cutting through the silence of the office floor. Staff avoided eye contact, whispering among themselves, the air charged with electricity. I caught glimpses of Mercer being summoned, his confident stride muted, his shoulders tense. For hours, the doors stayed shut while executives grilled him. By evening, the fallout began to spread like wildfire. Word traveled fast in corporate corridors, faster than any official memo. The vice president who strutted in 8 months ago, all buzzwords and arrogance, was now cornered. People said he stammered through explanations, tried to pin the failures on legacy culture and resistance to change. Others said he threw names under the bus, blaming subordinates for missed deadlines. None of it worked. The board had evidence. They had his own words, his own panic, etched into messages he couldn't deny. I watched from a distance, calm, composed. I didn't gloat, didn't smile. That wasn't my way. But there was a quiet satisfaction in knowing the truth was surfacing. He had dismantled something that worked, something rare, to build an empire of ego. Now the empire was collapsing, and the debris was falling squarely on his shoulders. Employees who once nodded politely at him now avoided his gaze. Directors who once entertained his jargon turned their backs in meetings. The man who had tried to erase my legacy was erasing himself in real time. That night, long after the office lights dimmed, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up and saw his name flash across the screen, a final message blinking in the dark. "Please, I need your help." They're going to fire me. The boardroom was colder than usual that morning. the hum of the air conditioning filling the silence before the meeting began. I sat in the back, not at the table but close enough to see everything. The fluorescent lights overhead washed the color out of the room, leaving pale faces and sharp shadows. Daniel Mercer sat at the center, shoulders hunched in a chair that suddenly looked too big for him. The swagger was gone. His tie was crooked, his palms slick against the polished surface of the table. He kept glancing at the door, as if someone might burst through and save him at the last second. No one did. The chairman called the meeting to order with clipped efficiency. One by one, the board members laid out their findings: missed contracts, irate clients, financial projections nosediving, charts and graphs that once trended up now fell off a cliff. Every shortcut Mercer had taken, every hollow promise he'd made, was displayed under the harsh white lights. His voice, usually smooth and commanding, cracked when he tried to respond. "It's not as bad as it looks," he said, but the words landed limp, brittle. His eyes darted from face to face, looking for sympathy. All he found were cold stares. I watched the sweat bead along his forehead, his collar dampening under the pressure. The man who had once called me outdated now stuttered like a rookie caught in a lie. He tried blaming the team he assembled, claiming they hadn't adapted fast enough. He tried spinning the failures as short-term turbulence. He even tried dragging my name into it, suggesting his troubles came from the legacy system I had left behind. But the evidence cut through each excuse. My reports, my documentation, the testimonials and awards. All of it spoke louder than his trembling voice. It was like watching a man sink into quicksand. The more he flailed, the faster he went under. His hands shook as he shuffled papers, his throat tightening each time someone cut him off mid-sentence. He wasn't leading a room anymore. He was begging it. And in that room, begging was death. Then the chairman delivered the final blow. His voice was steady, unflinching, carrying the weight of judgment. "Mr. Mercer, you are relieved of your position effective immediately." The words hit like artillery, final and undeniable. The silence that followed was absolute, the kind of silence that seals a man's fate. Mercer's mouth opened slightly, as if to argue, but no sound came out. His shoulders collapsed inward, and whatever fire he had left, extinguished on the spot. He didn't just lose his job in that moment. He lost everything that made him marketable. The trust, the reputation, the image of competence he had built on smoke and mirrors. Without those, he was nothing but a name tied to failure. And in this industry, failure clings like a scar. No board would take a chance on him again. No executive circle would welcome him back. His career was scorched beyond repair. I stood when the meeting adjourned. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. There was no satisfaction in watching a man dismantle himself, only inevitability. I walked out of the building, the sunlight outside sharp and blinding, after the sterile glare of the boardroom. It hit me like a clean slate, warm against my face. And for the first time in months, I felt the weight ease off my chest. Betrayal is older than business. It's older than marriage, older than war. It always follows the same pattern: trust given, advantage taken, consequences denied, until they arrive like thunder. I've seen it overseas. I've seen it in boardrooms. I've seen it in kitchens and bedrooms. The setting changes, but the story doesn't. Betrayal always ends the same way. And sometimes, survival isn't about fighting back. It's about waiting long enough for the betrayer to destroy themselves.